one of the things you talk about in your book is the spirit of cannabis, the spirit of the cannabis. So my wondering here is poorly formed. I think as I speak it, it'll become a question, and maybe you'll make sense of it in the process. Which is talking about cannabis as a medicine, or as a, just like, let's say, a plant, a psychoactive that we can consume, and you bring it on board into your yoga practice, right? And it seems like yoga is a if I am to assume, sort of like an active way of being in relationship with this harmony, or working towards being in harmonious relationship with life, or what have you. When we bring something else on board, something that has a spirit, as you suggest in your book, that maybe you could communicate with, what's the influence on that relationship there from a communicating with the spirit of a plant sort of thing? Where does cannabis fit inside of a yoga session? Where does yoga fit inside of communicating with the plant?
Well, I think that yoga gives us greater sensitivity to everything across the board. So it's going to give us greater sensitivity to an intuitive understanding of cannabis and the experience that can be had with cannabis. That's my experience anyway. But with regard to the spirit of the plant itself, this is a hard notion for those of us who didn't grow up in the forest. For people in the Amazon, many of the shamans that I've spent time with over the last 24 years or so, for them, it's just an everyday thing, communing with the spirits of plants and gaining information and knowledge from those plants in different ways. It's just part of getting your messages about life. For us, it's a harder consideration because we've been brought up in a more mechanistic way of thinking about things, and we don't really allow plant spirit. But with cannabis, if you can, even as an act of imagination, letting yourself off the hook from believing it, focus on the cannabis, invoke the spirit of the cannabis, invite it to open up its secrets to you, then at the very least, again, my experience, your time in that cannabis space will be richer and more fulfilling, just in terms of the total pleasure and delight of it. And you may find yourself actually having sort of energetic interflow with this immense presence. I certainly have. This is, as I think you know very well, not an unfamiliar idea. Certainly, with many of the ayahuasca shamans, they emphasize dieting on different plants, on becoming familiar with the spirits of those plants and developing an ally relationship with those spirits. And I think that we can do that with cannabis. I also believe that the spirit of cannabis is absolutely gigantic, immense, unlike very few plants out there, possible exception being coffee and tea. With just this global power to communicate and a tremendous capacity to seep its way into all sectors of society, regardless of the penalties, which have been considerable over time. So I would submit to you that the spirit of cannabis is immense, that the fundamental and intrinsic nature of the benefits of cannabis are healing and integrative. And yes, also, if you just plain want to get stoned and go on a long walk in the woods, I mean, that's a good, wonderful thing, and that should not be downplayed as lesser, It's part of the delightful experience of being a human being. But I do think there is a big, big spirit there.